Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Good Grognards. I'm Than Gibson. Who are you?
I'm Derek White.
And we're the Good Grognards. So thanks, everybody, for joining us tonight. Looking to have some good chat interaction with everyone. So to kick things off, hey, Troll Lord Games is here. Welcome, Troll Lord. Thanks for hopping in and supporting us.
Woohoo!
To kick things off tonight, we are going to do, as we always do, our first segment of the show is Grognards Doing Good. So let's switch over here to our wonderful presentation page. There we go. And we've got four pretty cool stories. Two new and two from last week that we're going to cover again because we just think they're so important. But the first one I want to talk about here is if you guys did not get a chance to see this stream yesterday, go find it. This was a fantastic 20th level D&D one-shot put on by these fantastic creators that you see here. A lot of names you probably recognize. B. Dave Walters was the DM. Satine Phoenix, Abria Iyengar, who's currently DMing over on Critical Role, Amy Dallin, Tanya DePass, Travis McElroy, and Charlene Byer. They were doing a charity stream for, I think it's pronounced WAVAW, WAVAW. That is a rape crisis center, specifically catering to or supporting folks, women, or actually anyone who has been a survivor of sexual violence. And in about 4 hours, they raised $16,000 for this one charity. And you can still donate to this and support this if this is a cause that is important to you or you think is a worthy cause. You can actually go find that. The link to go donate is bit.ly/DND_champions. And there's a great raffle with a huge prize pack. I think there's like a D&D Beyond subscription in there. I think there is something from Hero Forge. There's lots of great stuff in there. So go check that out and donate and support this great cause. Second up, we just want to talk about Jasper's Game Day real fast. Jasper's Game Day has been around for a little bit, doing some great work around suicide prevention awareness. Among people ages 15 to 24, suicide is the second leading cause of death. And Jasper's Game Day works to really try to bring those numbers down by reducing the stigma around talking about suicide, about mental health, and raising awareness about ways that you can find help and counseling if you need it. But specifically doing that awareness through the TTRPG community by doing charity streams and events at cons and working with content creators to get the word out about this. It's a great cause. Go check them out at jaspersgameday.com or on Twitter at jaspersgameday. And then real quick, just a quick mention about Founders and Legends is coming up. July 24th, 25th. This is going to be on twitch.tv/GaryCon Live. This is our friend Luke Gygax bringing together old school and new school. there's our GaryCon rep. Bringing together old school and new school creators and DMs and players and fans to just have some fun celebrating the history of D&D and usually supporting a good cause. Like in the past, there's been support for Extra Life. I think that's who it is again this year. I haven't seen for sure, but go check out Founders and Legends the weekend of July 24th and 25th. And lastly, got a lot of good response from folks on this one, so I want to go and push it again. Please help out our friend the Pickled Dragon. there is a great sale by 3D printed miniatures, Adventures in 3D. Right now, you can get 20% off any miniature in their Etsy shop using the code GetPickled. And all of the proceeds from that will go to help our friend Matt Rauscher, who was paralyzed, get settled in a new home. So he's got a better living situation. And there's just some phenomenal community warmth coming up around this guy, and well deserved. He's a wonderful guy. As I said last week, he was the second guy I met at GaryCon. The first time I went, Derek was the first, and Matt was the second. So definitely want to support him. All right, that is it for Grognards Doing Good. So tonight, Derek, you came up with this topic, and I think it's a great topic, but I want to let you kick it off and tell folks what our topic for tonight is.
The mythical golden age of role playing. The reason I called it the mythical golden age of role playing is because everybody I talk to has their own mythical age of role playing, when role playing was the greatest. For example, I see Troll Lord Games is in here, and today I was chatting with Steven Chenault from Troll Lord Games, and he said, of course, it was the 1970s. And for me, I didn't start playing D&D and role-playing games until the 1980s, and for me, it was the 1980s. But then I talked to a lot of people a decade or so younger than me. They started really playing in the late 80s, early 90s. For them, that's the golden age. But then I have friends who came in and played during third edition. That was the first time they ever played. They were some younger friends of mine. Many of them were graduating high school when third edition came out. Now they're in their 30s. And for them, the D20 boom of third edition was their golden age of role playing. And so on and so forth. And many people today say we're in the golden age of role playing now because fifth edition has blown up D&D again, and role playing game sales are continue to grow more and more people are playing, especially during the pandemic. And so everybody has their mythical golden age of role playing. And I hear people argue about it. They fight about when was the best time to be a role player. And my answer, of course, is the mythical golden age of role playing is, are you playing games? Are you playing right now? That's the golden age of role playing. Whenever you sit down at the table and you sling the dice with your friends. Now, we'll say the one really cool thing about playing right now, especially if you're coming into the game, you are coming up on 50 years of history of tabletop role-playing games. You have 50 years of that history. And so there is so much you could draw from, so many resources you can get a hold of that we didn't have when we were younger. I mean, when I was a kid, there was so little out there. But I get frustrated when people argue about when was the greatest time to be a role player. And I would say the greatest time, honestly, is that first time you pick up the dice, that first time you lose your imagination, and you can never really get back to that day. The first time I sat at a table and was able to play a human cleric. Yeah, that was the first character I played was Nanok the Barbarian that I remember in first edition. And Nanok, of course, is Conan spelled backwards because I wasn't that creative. And that's the mythical age of role play is that first time you open your mind and your imagination to battle evil monsters, slay the demons, and win great treasure and get great rewards. So yeah, that's my mythical. That's why I call it mythical.
Yeah,
because a myth keeps growing. A myth is evocative. A myth is powerful. It doesn't mean it's false. It's something that spoke to you on an emotional level. And so the mythical age of role playing is anytime a role playing game speaks to you on an emotional level.
Okay. I like that. I like that. Um, uh, Trillard says you're a little quiet. Let's see if I told him that it's hard to get you to sit still.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You
um,
can't get me to sit still.
um, I like this idea. The idea that any one given time period is the golden age is I think that that's a bit of a falsehood. Um, you know, so my background is not only am I a gamer, but I'm also a comic artist. I used to have a comics and gaming shop, and I think about when I hear Golden Age, I think about Golden Age comics, right? And they define Golden Age comics as anything before a certain time period. That was the Golden Age of comics, but I gotta be honest with you, the vast majority of the stuff that was in the golden age of comics, we don't remember. It's
Mhm.
gotten too far away by this point. It's 100 years of history. We have certain pieces of it that we keep. We keep Superman and Wonder Woman and Batman. We keep those, but for every one of those, there's like 20 that have fallen by the wayside. And you would argue that really they were not even what we know them as now. Superman didn't fly in his first comics. He
No,
jumped, he leapt over tall buildings, and that was it. So there is an evolution there, and to say that any one time period is a golden age, I think is a falsehood. Um, but I think you can have your own golden age, and I
yeah,
like that idea. I like that it is subjective, that it is a personal thing, and I think that that is why we see so much arguing over this. I think we see so much arguing over what a golden age is, what the golden age is because your golden age is not my golden age, and heaven forbid I'm wrong and you're right. That's
hmm,
that's how we
yeah,
get right.
yeah,
Um, my golden age for me, probably I started playing in '89, '88. I started playing in '88. Uh, we talked about this last week with the Mincer Red Box.
yeah.
Um, but honestly, I think my golden age of role playing probably was my high school years. So not till like 4 years later, somewhere around 92 to 96. Um, but you and I talked about this offline. Um, we got to play decent amounts then, but we've played more as adults than we have
Yeah,
as kids because we set our own schedules. We don't have to wait for the weekend to go over to our friend's house. Also, the modern technology has come a long way and let us
yeah,
let us
definitely.
handle it. I mean, but so I don't know. Maybe we're in another golden age here that you and I, with our campaign we're doing right now, we're gonna look back in 5-6 years and go like, man, that was a lot of fun. That was another golden age, and I think that's possible. Let's look at what some of the. Oh yeah,
Well,
go ahead. While I'm looking at the
to
chat.
yeah, to piggyback on that, this last year, while the pandemic has been hard and emotionally draining so much, for me, part of the lifeblood that I got was being able to game. I gained more during the pandemic than I was doing before the pandemic.
Isn't that crazy?
Normally because my schedule was this. I was playing. I had just got to playing once a month in a Call of Cthulhu game regularly, and then so 12 times a year, right? 12 times a year, once a month, 12 times a year. And then I would usually run some games at a convention or two. So let's say maybe 16 or 17 games a year,
Yeah.
which was pretty good compared to previous years.
Right.
However, during the pandemic, I got to where I was playing every week. Because things were shut down. I couldn't go anywhere. We couldn't do anything. And my wife's like, yeah, you need to blow off some steam. And so I'm playing every week. And then I start running a game. And then I'm still running convention games and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, in a way, I think the pandemic for us gamers, especially us tabletop gamers, has opened up a way for us to enter into our own new golden age of gaming.
I think so too. I think so too. Um, I really, at the beginning of it all, I really would not have expected to play other than with my family. Us in quarantine. Um, uh, I was already breaking out. What can I run for the kids, that kind of thing. But I really didn't expect to be playing D&D with an adult for a year. And then it just so happened that you and everybody else that's in our campaign right now all kind of said the same thing of, um, you know, we miss it. And that's when I was like, okay, well, let's do this weekly thing. And, and it was awesome. It's been awesome. I'm having a blast with it. So some of the comments. So Baboonsky says, uh, I go to the age. The golden age for me was definitely when I started playing 77. I can remember so well walking down the street and asking my buddy where he was going, and he told me he was going to try out a new game, and I followed him and never turned back. Um, Haunted Holler says played 2E every school day for almost a year during my junior year in high school, and I was too distracted by the ladies. But once 3E came out, I was in love with the RPG. And also said that if I love 2E, which to me fan, if I love 2E, I need to try Castles and Crusades. I want to try Castles and Crusades. I have it. I just have never found anybody that's willing to play with me on a regular basis. I've got one guy right here that's willing to play with me, but man, most of our group is typical. Like our everybody in our home campaign that Derek and I are in right now, um, we're all parents. And so, like, sitting down and learning a new rule system for most of them is a daunting task. But I want to play Castles and Crusades. Like I said, I've got the whole, I've got quite a bit of it. Um,
Without trying to do a Castles and Crusades plug, I think the biggest frustration of 4E and 5E gamers would have with CNC is it does not have that level of crunch,
right,
which is actually, you know me, that's what I love about it.
right.
Because Jonathan's my DM and he's like, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna try this, and he's like, yeah, you can't, your bard can't cast that many spells in one round.
It's true.
And
It's
I'm
true.
like,
Yeah.
I'm trying to chain cast over here. You know.
um, yeah. So now we're getting offers to play. So well,
Yeah.
we have to figure
With
this out now.
we've got all these people from Troll Lord Games up in
I
here.
know
That's
it.
why.
I know it. They're
Well,
like,
you're gonna see a Haunted Holler painting this weekend.
yep.
He's gonna be over for my birthday. Yeah,
Oh,
that's right. Viewers, this weekend's my birthday, and we're going to come over, hang out, and just have a good old time with some friends from the Min Max podcast. We're going to have some friends like Haunted Holler Painting coming over, my DM's coming over, and we're going to play some games, hang out, and eat some good food.
that's awesome. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Um, I'm gonna we're gonna try to run a game, right? We're gonna see if we can get a game
Yeah,
squeezed
yeah,
in.
we're going to see if we can get squeezed in. I think we should be able to. It's just a few little hitches here and there.
Yeah.
The 12-year-old is the biggest hitch
Uh,
because we don't want him too bored. If he gets too bored, then we nobody has fun.
he's a good hitch to have. I don't mind having that hitch. So
Yeah.
what else? So we got a few other folks in chat. Anybody else have some opinions on what the golden age is for them? Um, going back to to what I was talking about a minute ago. You know, I think we've all got kind of a similar situation of what Babinski was saying. Having that friend that's like, hey, let's go. I'm going to go check out this new game, or you should come look at this. Come over here and look at this. I think that that's part of it as well. Is it's the connections that you make with your gaming, right? I mean, you can play D&D, you can play RPGs for 30 years or more, and if it's not fulfilling, if you're not making those lifelong connections, then I don't know if you're going to have that level of golden age. So I think that's part of it too. Um,
Yeah.
Shared experience. That's it, Haunted Holler. It's all about that shared experience.
Oh yeah.
And that's what I think makes this hobby unique. So
Yeah.
good deal. Well, so we're going to, I guess,
Yeah, it is time for our next segment that
Yeah.
we're putting together. This is something that we thought would be some fun for all of you out there watching. This is what's new on your shelf. And so, if you've got something new on your shelf, we want you to tell us about it in the comments section. We want to know what's new on your shelf, whether it is a new 5th edition, 4th edition, 3rd edition, 2nd edition, or a Castles and Crusades book, or in my case, here's what's new on my shelf: Call of Cthulhu Dark Ages. Anybody who knows me knows I am a huge fan of Chaosium. I love the people at Chaosium. This is not sponsored. They have sent me free items before. No, I paid for this with my hard-earned preaching money. And this is what's new on my bookshelf. It's Call of Cthulhu Dark Ages, is a historical setting of horror and mystery for the Call of Cthulhu role-playing game. The Roman Empire has fallen, and the unquiet dead, secret cults, and ancient creeping nightmares now lurk, waiting to ensnare the unwary. The cosmic terrors of the Cthulhu mythos loom over all, threatening to blot out the world itself. In Anglo-Saxon England, with nothing but their wits and candlelight to illuminate their way, ordinary folk, be they nuns, soldiers, or merchants, band together to confront the rising dark.
Man, that sounds like a lot of fun.
I love Dark Ages. I'm a huge fan of Dark Ages. When Vampire Dark Ages came out, I love Vampire Dark Ages. It was great.
Yeah.
I never got a chance to play it. But man, the idea of it, because everybody wanted to play modern vampire, and this was the early 2000s, and my idea of a modern vampire didn't go over well with them. I wanted to be the vampire lord of a trailer park, and they didn't like that. I wanted to be a meth dealing vampire lord of a trailer park. And my vampire group did not like that idea at all. Of course, then they said, what happens if the trailer park burns down? And I said, that's what cesspools are for. That's what the cesspool in the trailer park is for. That's so the vampire can go jump into it if he's on fire.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
I played one game of Dark Ages Vampire. This is totally off topic, but I think that's the point of this segment anyways. I played one game of Dark Ages Vampire, and I was playing a Ravnos, and I used my illusion magic. We were being set upon by villagers, like you do, and I used my illusion power to make the carriage that I was in look like it was on fire to kind of like scare off the villagers. It had the opposite effect because they then saw me not only as a creature of darkness but also a witch. So they just immediately started adding to the fire, and I got burned up. So they brought their own fire. But I do like the historical settings, that's for sure. So my new item on the shelf is not technically on the shelf. It's right next to the shelf. And that is, so Derek and I got to go visit Larry Elmore at his studio a while back. And
yes, we did.
And it was a great day. We had a lot of fun. And Larry was kind to gift us with some prints as part of that at the end.
And you got the best print.
I got
You got the best print.
I got the breast print. I got the Death of Sturm right there over the shoulder, and I got all of them. Finally, got all of them framed, professionally framed, and up on the walls of the game room here. So that has been that's been I've got one. You can't see it on the stream, but I've got a the companions piece from the Tales of the Lance box set. I love that piece. All the companions just sitting around the fire, and finally got that one framed up as well. I've had that one for 20 years. I got that from him at Gen Con 2000, and I've been carrying it around from house to house to house, and finally got it framed and put up. So that's my big I guess boast for the week. Also, side note, if you guys are not following Larry on social media or on his Patreon, Larry and his wife Betty just celebrated their 50th anniversary, which is a huge deal. And Larry has also announced that commissions are closed.
Yes, thank God for that.
Yes.
Larry has been painting what other people wanted him to paint for so many years, and now Larry is just going to paint what he wants to paint. And for those who do not know, Larry Elmore, who definitely fits the definition of a great grognard, Larry Elmore is one of the kindest, sweetest people, but he has done so much art that people don't know about. Everybody thinks about his fantasy art, but he is a great all-around artist. Some of the artwork he's done has that old school feel of what is his name? I told you that Norman Rockwell feel. He could do stuff that has a Norman Rockwell feel. He does landscapes. And I think he has a special love for sci-fi.
He does.
Which if you've ever seen his Star Frontier stuff, I mean, Elmore, I would just love to see more Elmore doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, Larry, so good on Larry. I love it when artists can create what they want to create. And I am so happy for that. I'm so happy for him.
Yeah.
His landscapes for Magic the Gathering are just
mwah. And most people don't really realize that he did it. Everybody tends to think that Larry was already, he was already done with D&D and Wizards by the time really, Magic really started rolling. But no, he did. He did some landscapes for that. I think one of my favorite stories from our visit was he's got this bookshelf full of reference books and everything that he's collected over the years. And I'm looking at this bookshelf, and there's Transformers in the original box. G1 Transformers up on top of the shelf. And he goes, "Oh, are you looking at my robots?" And I was like, "No, I'm looking at your books." He's like, "Oh, most people look at those robots up there, those Transformers." Yeah, I did the box art for those. We're talking like if you know Transformers, we're talking like Shockwave, like the purple gun guy. Yeah, he did the box art for that and some of the Dinobots. Who knew?
And
Who knew?
They sent him the figures.
Yeah.
He still has figures from the 80s.
Yeah.
In freaking box. Mm-hmm. And we're like, oh my God. My God.
And people just don't know. I mean, that's how prolific
sweetest
he is.
People.
He is.
And what I love is when we took Larry, I know we're getting way off the subject, but what I love is, we were shooting for the documentary, and what should have been an hour or two shoot, turned into a whole day with Larry. We were there for 8 or 9 hours, and it was just beautiful. And then we went to go eat because we're all starving and we haven't eaten. And we go to eat, and where should we go eat, Larry? The Huddle House. Nothing fancy, anything like that. He's like, let's go to the Huddle House, man. And for this old Southern boy, upgraded Waffle House is always good food for me.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely.
It was wonderful.
Yeah. So, and I think talking about Larry Elmore and his artwork is a nice way to segue into the last segment for the night. So, Derek and I had another idea when we were talking about this idea of what is the golden age of tabletop role playing games, specifically in this case D&D, and we had the idea: what if we take the old, well, here's what's wrong with this version of D&D and flip it on its head.
Yeah.
So let's take a look at every edition of D&D and just talk about what did we like from that edition? Because more than likely there's going to be a little something from everybody. Now, see, you're one up on me because you've got some of the older stuff here that I don't have. So I'm going to rely on you for that, and then I can kind of pick up midways because I borrowed all my when I was a kid. I borrowed all my stuff. I didn't have my own copies, and I'm regretting it now in older life. Um, but so let's start with I guess we should start with that first, right?
Yes,
Not even what we would consider first edition, right? This is just the original, right?
This is OD&D, Original Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
What's best about this edition? I will say that what I think is best about this edition of Dungeons and Dragons is simply it was the first.
Yeah.
That's what makes it the best. I mean, I could be honest and say the rules are a little difficult. The rules can be clunky at times, but what's best about it, it was first.
Mm-hmm.
What I love is the terminology in here that they used. Fighters weren't called fighters; they were called a fighting man.
Right.
So not very inclusive language, but
No.
but it was really kind of cool. You can see their connection to miniatures wargaming, and I think that is what makes original D&D so great. It was the first thing to make the bridge from miniatures wargaming to a game where you could personally play one of the characters on the field.
Yeah.
And so that I think is what's really powerful about that. And so that's the best thing to me. OD&D was the first, and it brought that bridge from just miniatures wargaming and squad-based wargaming down to you get to take on the character in a game yourself.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think there is something to be said for the simplicity of the original. Yeah, some of the rules were clunky, but to be fair, it was the first attempt, right?
Yeah.
And there's something about the purity of the original. It has not become overly complex yet. Now that being said, I like a little bit more overly complex, and we'll talk about some of the other stuff in a little bit. But I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there. It was the first. Oh, Haunted Holler's putting a kid to bed. Thanks
Hey,
for hanging with us.
thanks, Haunted Holler. We appreciate you stopping in.
Yeah, we'll see you this weekend. Um, so where do you want to go next? Do we want to stay
Well,
in
yeah,
the OG? Yeah.
next up, we have what is called the Holmes Basic box set.
Yep.
The Holmes Basic box set was their bridge, and other people know the history of this better than I do. I look at it as the bridge between original D&D and advanced Dungeons and Dragons.
Right.
What makes the Holmes Basic set so wonderful is it was really the first mass market meant for everybody. It
Mhm.
was out there really trying to get Dungeons and Dragons into the hands of everybody. It also was really good because it came with an adventure built in. So you had with this set. Oh, I don't have the adventure in here actually. I gave away my set that actually had all the good stuff in it. So, which was almost foolish of me to do so, but I gave it away. But it came with originally B2 Keep on the Borderlands.
Yeah.
And it allowed you to build up your own game. It allowed you the opportunity to grow as a DM. It was very bare bones. It was for you to flesh everything out, you to flesh your NPCs out. And I think that's still something we can learn from today. A lot of the adventures that are on the market have everything there for you. And it can be tough for a new DM or GM to try and follow everything in the story. So sometimes it's fun to just have a map, have some idea for some monsters, have some NPCs named, and then you just run with it with your own creativity. That was really good. The rules also began to be a little bit more streamlined.
Mm-hmm.
Character generation becomes a lot smoother, and that's something I think we'll see in the evolution of Dungeons and Dragons, is how streamlined character generation gets.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so Keep on the Borderlands was an interest, in my opinion, it was kind of an interesting adventure to include with this, because it was B2. It was not B1. It was B2.
Right.
And I think it's because it's sort of, I mean, my opinion, I think it's one of the it's kind of one of the first sandbox style modules.
Yes, it is.
And I think I think that was intentional. I think it was intentional to say there's more you can do with this game. And this was our first look at what is the real possibility with this game. It's not just about, it's not just about the combat. It's not just about the dungeon crawl. There's more to it. And me personally, I think that's what the best part about this one is. Next up, where do you want to go? Advanced?
No.
Or do we need to do?
Next up, we're going through. We're going to go. What I have next up is, of course, the Moldvay basic set.
Yep.
Now, what makes this really nice for me, and the reason I like this, of course, this was the first D&D I ever owned. But what I really liked about this box set is that honestly, what made this great was the reading material suggested in the back of it. It also began to lower the age. This was an introductory set for ages 10 and up.
Yeah.
And so they gave new readers, young readers, a suggested reading material for it. Yep. Rules wise, what I really liked, and this is something you see today in 5th edition. You see this in Castles and Crusades and other role-playing games that I really like on the rule side of things. Ability checks. Ability checks are in here. They're in the rules. This is where I, as a DM, learned to start using ability score checks. Oh, do I leap the chasm? Give me either a strength check or a dexterity check.
Yeah.
And I could do that based on your class or however I wanted to do it. Set the difficulty however I wanted to set it. And that's where I first got the idea for that. And that was from the Moldvay box set. So I really like that. That's one of my favorites there. And then, okay, Dan, hold it in on this box set.
Before you get to that one though, Moldvay, one thing I wanna say on that. Have you got the book? Can you get the book out?
Oh yes, of course.
So I want to
tell you, even still has the uncolored dice.
Nice. I want to tell you what my favorite part of Moldvay is.
Oh,
look at that. Okay,
girl, look at how that gleams. Look at how that gleams.
I think it's on page 20.
Page 20, which would of course been B20.
20.
Okay. What is on that?
It should be about no. I'm thinking a different one. Never mind. Continue forward. We'll come back.
Okay.
We'll come back.
Okay. All right. If you can find it there.
Yeah.
All right. So, Got to put the dice back on top so nothing gets damaged. Now this one, of course, this is one. If you have one and you want to send one to Than Gibson, he would love that very much.
Please do.
This, of course, is what is referred to as the Elmore or Mincer box set.
Yeah.
This one really popularized D&D in the 1980s. This had D&D just go. It was when D&D was blowing up. And what makes this excellent, and I don't think anybody has really copied this to the level that Frank Mincer did in the 80s, but I think it can still be done. And that is, it has step-by-step how to play D&D. It has a book in there that will walk you through it. You get to walk through an adventure. You get to learn how to roll the dice. You get to learn about saving throws and all that fun stuff. It is just excellent. And of course, it has the grand, beautiful Larry Elmore artwork on it, which makes it excellent also.
Yeah.
It was just rules wise. It was the first, I think, major streamlining of the rules. Yes, I know Advanced Dungeons and Dragons was a streamlining of the rules, but I think they streamlined it in this so much more smoothly than they did in AD&D. Plus, you just needed this box set to get up and going, and you were good to go.
Yeah, I mean, again, lowering the age level there, I think, was huge.
Yes.
I mean, I was 10, and we had that, and that's how we got started. I mean, that was key to it, right? The choose your own adventure style adventure in that, where you had the different numbered entries and each time could be different. You could run that solo, and that's kind of what we did, because there was only one set among like 4 or 5 of us. And
another thing about this, and you and I talked about this offline last week, one of the things about it that is really impressive to me, as a Southern boy in the mid 1980s, the main character was a female cleric.
Yep.
And that was my first look. Someone just said they created a Twitch account.
You know who that is?
Who's that?
That's Steve.
Oh, that's Steve Chanel?
No, that's Steve Durham from our home game.
Oh, way to go, Steve! That's awesome. Yeah, but there was a level of inclusivity that it opened my mind to in the 1980s for a young Southern boy to see a female cleric, because we didn't see female preachers back in the 80s in the South. That was just unheard of for us, Yep. And so that was beautiful. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I had to throw in that about the inclusivity. Since there's so much negative talk about inclusivity in gaming right now, and I think it's powerful that we point out that there were echoes of that in the 1980s.
Absolutely. I mean, it was everybody. I mean, it was huge. It sold millions of copies, right, in the 80s.
Yeah.
Some of that, some not all of that were little white dudes. No, what I was going to say was, that allowed us to take it home, look through it, read through it, and actually kind of play through on our own, so that when we did get a chance to come together, in gym class or recess or on the weekends, we could actually just play. It was a great little tutorial, and you're right, no other edition has ever done a tutorial in the game like that, which is pretty cool. There's always an example. You can always find that like example of a gameplay, and it's like, DM says this and player does this, and then DM says roll this. Like, that's in every version, but that one. No, so getting back earlier, I misspoke. I was thinking Mulvey, Holmes, the Holmes set. Have you got a Holmes? I've got one, but it's back on my table.
Yep, Holmes. I do have the Holmes. That was the second one we started with. Page 20, you say?
Yeah.
Holmes box set, page 20. Okay.
Should be about bottom third of it. There should be something in talking about how to, how the party should divvy up roles.
Combat rounds, time and movement. Who gets the first blow? The parry.
There should be something about keeping track of monsters killed and treasure gained. I think it's page 20.
No, but it looks like it would be in this section. Monsters.
The reason why I bring this up, this is totally selfish. Quick plug: my comic, my game setting Chronicle, came up with that name on my own to talk about the comic being a retelling of our D&D games. Someone gifted me a copy of Holmes, and there is a section in there where it says that the players should keep a chronicle, capital C, quotation marks, of all of their adventures, monsters killed, and treasure gained. Totally synchronicity, coincidence moment there, but it was sort of that like punch in the air of like, hey, you know what? I'm doing something right. Like I said, totally selfish, totally off the rails. But that's my favorite part about that. Let's move on to. Do we want to flip over to advanced?
Yes. That's actually what's next on the list. I was not going to go through the whole Beckme line because that would keep us here all night. Here we go. This is what many people think of when they think of Dungeons and Dragons. Trampier art, and the player's handbook with the demon statue on the front, with the thieves trying to pry the gems out of its eyes, dead lizard men on the altar. This was gorgeous. It was just gorgeous. It's just amazing. I have to admit, as a kid, what I loved in this were the tables. The art that was in here was just spectacular. What I liked about this version for me was it gave options that I had not seen before. You suddenly see how to multi-class. Multi-class was not something I saw that was not available in the Mincer box sets. You couldn't multi-class. Their levels were expanded. You got so many more magic spells, which is always a wonderful variety to have in a game like that. There was a little bit more crunch for those who were playing basic D&D or the Mincer line of D&D. There was a lot more crunch to it. It holds a special place in my heart because that was the edition I played the most when I was growing up, because that's what my gaming group played.
Yep. So Babunski asks, was there ever an adventure written about that cover? Yes, there is an adventure written about that cover. I think it is in. I'll have to double check, and maybe I'll put it in show notes on the YouTube. But I believe it is reprinted in Tales from the Yawning Portal in 5th edition. But basically, it is the Temple of Molech, and you go in and you actually have the chance to pry the gem out of the eye. Yeah.
This, of course, is one of my favorite things.
Yeah.
Right here, the Paladin in Hell. Of course, there was an adventure written about that as well. It's just, I know what I really liked about it. One of the things I liked, though I liked it and I hated it at the same time.
Okay.
Rules wise, I liked the introduction of the illusionist.
Yeah.
And I miss illusionists. I do
as
miss
a separate class.
Yes, as a separate class. I miss the illusionist.
So it's very interesting that you say that. If you guys don't know who Matt Colville is, he is a content creator, publisher of fifth edition supplements. He has been talking on his Twitch streams about reviving the Illusionist as its own fifth edition class. Um, and I anticipate seeing that come out from them in one of their Arcadia webzines at some point. So be on the look for that, because you're not the only one. You're not the only one that thinks that some of those specialty classes could really be their own full class rather than a subclass. I'd like to see that. The thing about I like about this one, this is when we got the separation of races and classes, right?
Yes, that also. Yes, I liked that as well.
Yeah.
It was in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons that suddenly, in basic D&D, what's your class? Well, I'm an elf.
I'm an elf.
An elf. And for those of you not familiar with that, in case we have some viewers pop in later, an elf was like a magic user fighter or a wizard fighter.
Yeah.
They were basically a fighter who could cast spells. So they had a limited number of spells. They had a limited number of fighting ability, but they could do both.
Right. They were sort of like other analogs to this in the Final Fantasy video game series, the Red Mages. They were sort of like them, or if you've ever played Hero Quest, the greatest board game ever made, according to some people. There's an elf in there that's also very similar to this. But they were like a precursor. They were almost, they were a fighter mage, basically.
Right.
And the dwarves were like a fighter rogue, kind of, because they had some mechanical abilities to them.
Yeah, dwarves were like a fighter rogue. I would say dwarves in basic were just like a really tough fighter.
Yeah.
I would say they were like a really tough fighter. I don't even know if I'd classify them as a rogue or a thief.
I just had some of those natural, like, I know how to find secret passage type things, right? If I recall. But yeah, they were.
Yes.
So
dwarves were the first dungeon delvers. They were truly dungeon delvers. That's what they were good at.
Yeah. You want to go up to the orange spines? Oh no! You're going straight into second edition.
Straight into second edition. We're just going to go straight into second edition.
There wasn't too much. The one thing I'd say about the orange spines is that was when we first started getting campaign settings, and we'll talk about that more in second edition, because that's my favorite part of second edition.
Yeah.
But that's where you started getting those.
Yeah, and the orange spines didn't update the rules.
No.
So the orange spine player's handbook didn't update the rules. They were just different covers for first edition rules. The rules started getting updated and added on with the Dungeoneer Survival Guide, the Wilderness Survival Guide. Yep. They added on to Unearthed Arcana. They added on to the rules, but they weren't necessarily rules updates.
Correct. And when I say that, that's when we first started getting campaign settings. I know there's going to be somebody that watches this and it's like, that's not true. Greyhawk's been around since the beginning. Blackmore has been around since the beginning. That's true. But those were like defaults. Like it was just assumed you were in one of those, right?
Correct.
Like this is the first time where you had like, this is a whole new thing. This is Dragonlance. This is Forgotten Realms. Greyhawk got its own book. Like that's the difference there when they started expanding the rules and adding that stuff in.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about the black books.
Yeah, the black books, which of course this is the black books of second edition, are actually the I think second or third print.
The revised second edition, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, this is the revised second edition. I don't know what happened to my other second edition books I had. I still have my white cover with the blue on it, which was gorgeous, monster manual. But second edition, really, what I liked about that, and I will say, Second edition was what I started playing when I got back into D&D in my mid-20s. And what I really loved about second edition was it brought a lot more cohesion to the rules. Rules, while I love the rules expansions like Unearthed Arcana, even with all its problems, I loved Unearthed Arcana. I loved the Dungeoneer Survival Guide, the Wilderness Survival Guide. All of those things were kind of cool. What second edition did was it took all of that, it cleaned it all up, and it just brought it in. And there was so much. I'm going to tell you, this is, I'll be honest, what I loved about second edition rules was weapon speed factors. I mean,
that's an interesting one.
For a guy who does not like a lot of crunch, once I figured out weapon speed factors, I was like, yeah. And I was min-maxing like crazy because I really wanted up in initiative if I was running a fighter or something. And so I would find a weapon with the fastest speed possible. And so weapon speed factors were just something I enjoyed when I was playing second edition. I'm not saying I'd enjoy it now, but it has a lot to be said for it. Okay.
Yeah.
A barbarian, even if he's got a good initiative, if that barbarian is using a club the size of a small mountain, it should take them longer to swing that thing than it takes my halfling thief to jab him in the belly with a rapier. Yep.
Third
Here
edition.
we are with third edition, 3.5 book. But I started with, I played 3.0 or 3.x as we call it. It was a total revision to the rules. It caused a lot of controversy, caused a lot of frustration with some people. And when it first came out, I was not very happy because I just bought all my second edition books to get back into the game. This is what sold me on third edition was armor class. Armor class. They took away the negative armor class. They took away Thaco. They took away the charts. And all you have to do is roll high. And that concept, while at first a little annoying, became a beautiful thing for me. And I really, really loved it. And the other thing about third edition, my wife had played some second edition with me. And when I introduced her to third edition, she picked it up like that. Third edition was so much easier to introduce a new player to. And it was at that point my Grognard card almost got revoked because I really liked that I was able to introduce younger players, not necessarily younger in age, but younger in having played RPGs. But I introduced my wife, who was in her 20s, to D&D with second edition. And third edition, she was able to pick up and play so much more easily. I started introducing high school kids to D&D with third edition. They picked it up quickly. That was what I really loved about third edition. Everything was about just rolling high.
Yeah.
You didn't have to worry about, I roll low for this, I roll high for that, and trying to keep track of what you roll high and low for.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say the same thing. You did notice that as we talked through this, we never talked about Thaco. We're trying to keep it positive, but I don't miss Thaco.
Well, you know,
other than the nostalgia factor.
On the Thaco notes, I will say this. One of the things they did with the basic box sets, they always had the character sheets with the chart for the players on the bottom of them.
Yeah.
And so that did make it a lot easier for the players. Unfortunately, it sometimes detracted from role playing. And I
Yeah.
remember that even as a kid, it's like, okay, what do you need to hit X, Y, or
Now I got to
Z?
go do math. I'm in the middle of a story flow. Now I got to go do math. Yeah.
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 As a kid, I like to brag about how it helped with my math skills, which it did. It helped me with learning negative numbers and all of that. It was great. And that was a positive for that time in my life. But it really at times disrupted the flow of the story because we would have to figure out what hit what.
Yeah.
And that could be a problem. But on the positive side, I did like the detail of the character sheets they put out for basic D&D.
Yeah. Yeah. It was all right there.
And I only needed a 2-page character sheet on the front and the
In
back.
the back, and that was it. Yep.
It was actually 1 page printed on the front and the back, and that was all the character sheet I needed.
Yeah.
So again, that's a positive. If you can slim down your character sheets, get as much information on one printed sheet of paper, I think that's pretty darn awesome.
Yeah, it is. So I think the other thing with third edition that I really liked was so when I get to play, and I don't get to play very often because I'm a forever DM. But I like to play bards and rogues, and the expansion on skills was something I loved, and I still in the way that I build out my adventures as a DM, I focus a lot on skill checks. You were talking about doing ability checks earlier, early on. That just kept expanding. And I like the proficiency bonus. I like the way that works better than a percentage.
Yes.
For a few reasons. One, it's just easier. And then the other thing I liked about third edition was for the first time, I felt like I had the tools to build as a DM. I had the tools to build something that was balanced, because you had the CR capabilities. Now, sometimes you had to fiddle with that a little bit, but you at least started getting the idea of what a challenge rating, should be for X kind of character. Or X kind of party. So I liked that. It was the first time that I really felt like they were providing me with all of the tools I need to be a DM and not just making it up on the fly. I don't mind to make it up on the fly. It's just nice to have the support to do it.
Yeah.
All right, let's go there. Fourth edition.
Fourth edition. Unfortunately, I did not play enough fourth edition to keep the books, and the main reason I didn't play fourth edition was not because I hated it. There were things about it I liked. There were things about it I disliked, just like there is with every edition of Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
We moved a few months ago, so the only fourth edition thing I really have right now, and it's still in a box, was their reprint of the Mincer box set for 4E. And so I have that. That said, fourth edition was a huge transformation to the game in some ways, but in other ways, it was a return to their miniature wargaming roots. And for a lot of players, they loved that. They loved the miniature strategy.
Yeah.
They loved strategizing left and right. Thanks for stopping in, Chuck. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing.
Have a good evening.
Yeah, you have a good night.
Yeah. And so I wasn't a huge fan of that, but some of the people I played with loved that level of strategy.
Yeah.
What I liked about fourth edition is the same thing you're about to mention. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Than.
So I have two things. First off, Steve asks, what version did I first start running Chronicle games in? That was in second edition AD&D. It was actually that black book right there. I had one that literally the cover wore off of it because I ran it so much in college. But I have converted over the years. It went to third. There were third edition Chronicle games, so Chronicle started in 90. 9. Um, so it was at the tail end of second edition. Um, 2000 comes around, third edition comes out, and I immediately converted everything and didn't look back because the D20 license, the that capability to put out to not hide the fact that I'm clearly publishing something that is a D&D derivative without saying it's a D&D derivative. Now I just have the license to do it. I didn't look back after that
Right.
because of that. Um, no, so the two things for fourth edition, minions, I think is what you were going to talk about.
Yep.
Um, I love the idea of minions, just because sometimes you just want to wade through a whole bunch of skeletons. There's just something to that about D&D. Our game this past week, I put minions in.
Yep.
We had tons of zombies
Yep.
well, not skeleton pirates. There were skeleton pirates to run
Yep.
to just walk through. Now these guys are 16th level, so I didn't even have to make them like true minions where it's like 1 hit point a piece. I just put actual skeletons in because they're doing more than 11 hit points a time. But there's just something to that, and I really like that idea that you
And
could.
as a DM, you get to force your players to use up their spells and their
Yes.
resources and smacky dacky dacky them.
Yep.
And I hated you and loved you for it all at the same time.
So there was that, and then the other thing, Steve says spoilers. Yeah, you're gonna be, since you're missing out this week too, Steve. You're gonna be coming back to a lot of catching up. But the other thing I liked in fourth edition was spells as rituals. Um, Specifically, some of the spells that you would think would take time to sit down and do. They didn't. They didn't. They don't cost you if you cast them as a ritual. They don't cost a slot. And I like that idea that if I want to sit down and identify for 10 minutes, then I can do that. Now there were some spells I didn't quite agree with that were moved into the ritual space, but in general, I liked that idea. And then lastly, and I don't, like I said, I left all my books over on the table. But if you go look at the thumbnail that I posted up on Instagram, the fourth edition book that I have is the fourth edition Essentials.
Yeah.
These were put out towards the end of the fourth edition life. And if you haven't looked at these, go try to find a copy of them. They fixed some of the problems that people had with fourth edition in a few ways, and they also refined it back to that old school D&D feel. You didn't have subclasses. You just were a fighter. And the fighters did very specific things. The wizards did very specific things. You could pick what kind of wizard you were, so you did have that option. Clerics still had their domains, but it was getting back to the essentials of what was D&D, and it actually, that
Yep.
I liked fourth edition. I liked that version of fourth edition, but it was at the very tail end. I'd already moved on to Pathfinder, which technically is 3.75, but we're not going to really talk about Pathfinder tonight. But and a lot of people did, but I did like that. So let's wrap up with fifth edition. What do we like about fifth edition?
And let's go ahead and pull the player's handbook for fifth edition. That one's an easier reach.
Yep.
Here's the player's handbook for fifth edition. Uh, you know, when fifth edition first came out, I loved it because it got back to a little bit of that old school feel. But the biggest thing, rules wise, I love with fifth edition on the rules side of things is that they put in advantage and disadvantage. Advantage and disadvantage was like, my goodness, where has this been all these years?
It's been in
Uh,
other systems.
yeah,
It is in
it
other systems. They just finally got it
yeah,
into D&D.
and it was just a revelation to me, and I was just like, why would what where was this? I mean, it just added so much. They really brought back ability checks
Yeah.
in fifth edition, which has been something I always love. Which, to compare that to Castles and Crusades has something very similar.
Yep.
So in my own game, I was talking to Than about this offline a while back. In my own game, I had a player say, "Hey, I'm running a fifth edition game for my daughter, some of her friends, and a friend of mine, and a character had a spell cast on them. And my daughter is a cleric. The spell cast on one of the other players was a clerical spell, and my daughter said, "Hey, I want to see if I can figure out what that spell is." And I said, "Well, here's what I want you to do. I want you to roll a d20 and add your I should have done religion bonus, but I said just add your arcana bonus. But I said add your arcana bonus to it. Well, how do you set the DC for that spell? I just made the DC 10 plus the spell level.
Yeah.
That was that simple.
Right.
Castles and Crusades uses something very similar, but if there's not a rule for it, you could do an ability check. You can set DCs really easily, and fifth edition allows for that freedom.
Yeah.
Which, when I run a game, I want the freedom to be able to do stuff like that on the fly.
Yeah.
I am a much more on the fly type DM. I like that flexibility, but again, advantage and disadvantage is just such a sweet little thing for both the DM and the player. It allows them both to have a lot of fun in the game.
Yep.
I love it when I, as a DM, am forced to roll disadvantage on an attack.
Right.
I love that. that. It's like, holy crap, and you roll a nat 20 and a 2, and you got to take that freaking 2, man. That's hard for a DM. It's hard for a player too, but man, it is a load of fun.
It is.
So I like that. There are things in 5e. We're here to talk about the positive stuff. And so I'm not going to get into the negative stuff, but I really like it. The people I play with, what they really like about 5th edition, I've noticed, is it's a super heroic game. It's not heroic. It's meant to be super heroic. And they like playing those super heroic fantasy characters.
Yeah.
So those are my positives about 5th edition.
Yeah. So almost all of my 5th edition experience has been as a DM. I think I can probably count on maybe 2 hands the amount of 5th edition I've played. And from a DM perspective, advantage and disadvantage, definitely. It's a simple mechanic. That's what I like. And I can use it to reward my players. If you do something that's cool, if we're talking rule of cool, and Derek does something crazy, which half the time he does, and I like it, I'm going to give him advantage on it just because I can. Like, it's not like used to. You could with older editions, you could reward good role playing with XP. You don't have to do that now. It's not so crunchy. It's something that actually affects the game in the moment, and it's not something that just happens after the fact. Afterwards, like, oh yeah, hey, by the way, you did good tonight, 50 XP. No. We're doing that right now in the moment. I like that.
I do too.
I like that. I like that it is so modular without feeling modular. I can grab stuff and just throw it all together, do a quick little calculator, check just to make sure that things work right, and then we're good to go. The problem, comparing this to, say, 4th edition was also very modular, but it felt modular. It felt like I was pulling this stat block and this stat block and then throwing them together, and that's it. This is much more organic. Rudolph asks, so if you could be a 5e player, what class do you want to try? So me personally, if I actually get to play 5e. In 5e, I almost always play bards. Um, and Derek, no, Derek plays a bard in my game, but Derek's also met my bard. I have my character. Everybody has their one character, especially DMs, because we don't get to play that often. So DMs often have their one character that's them. I have that. His name's Rice, and he's a bard. So I like bards. They're storytellers, and I'm a storyteller, and that's mine. Second is rogue. I like the sneaky guys. Um, but the other thing, the last thing I like about fifth edition, yeah, go ahead.
Than's problem is he's DMing himself, because I like to play bards, and my second choice is usually a rogue. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Steve says 5e modular makes homebrews much easier to do. It really does. Third edition and fifth edition to me have been the easiest ones to homebrew with. I had trouble with fourth edition. I think that was one of the reasons why I didn't stick to it. And then Pathfinder, of course, being an offshoot of third edition, I didn't have problems with that either. But I had to factor in, I had to think about bonuses a lot more with Pathfinder. But second edition, honestly, I can't say whether or not second edition was easy to homebrew with or not, because I was still learning how to homebrew at that point. So you know what? At some point, I should teach everybody how to play second edition, and then we'll homebrew and we'll see what happens.
We should talk about that. How to homebrew, because
I definitely want to. I think we could do a whole show or two about homebrewing. Absolutely.
Because see, I as a DM, everything I ever ran was homebrew.
Yeah.
Even when I was running Greyhawk back in the 80s.
Sure. Yeah.
It was home brewed. Everything was up for change. I always grabbed stuff from here and there, but we'll talk about that some other time, about how to home brew.
Yeah, let's put that on the topic list. And if you segue, if you guys have topics for us, let us know. We're always looking for new topics to talk about.
Yeah.
Rudolph says that he's a forever DM also, but likes to play clerics. Started playing D&D back in '83, and it's been the game of choice for decades. One interesting thing I think about forever DMs is almost every forever DM I've ever seen get to plays a spellcaster.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go back to the original forever DM. Who was Gary Gygax's character? Mordenkainen, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Matt Mercer, if we want to go to somebody who's very current, when he gets to play, his character that's most associated with him is a spellcaster. And the list could go on. I think that's very interesting, because I would pick one as well.
Up until just a few years ago, I was a forever DM. I mean, like I said earlier in the show, I had been not been playing as much, but I would always run games. I'm always DMing. And my first choice, when I got into your regular 5e game, was to play a spellcaster.
Yeah.
When I was a kid and I played clerics. Clerics were my PC of choice back in the 1980s.
I think there's just something, I don't know. I think you could do a psychological evaluation on forever DMs and their characters of choice. It's something about being able to manipulate the world with magic.
This is true.
So Willie says, very informative discussion, guys. Thank you so much. Started in '76 with OD&D, and then played the life out of AD&D through university. Missed all the subsequent editions and fell out of the RPG hobby for decades until I revived role-playing with God Kids using Castles and Crusades in 2008. Still loving it. Shameless plug.
Well,
Willie, Willie.
Let me show you the other one within easy reach right here. I keep my key gaming reference books right here for when I run a game. I have my fifth edition. I've got my Call of Cthulhu. I've got my Pulp Cthulhu. I have Cthulhu Mythos by Sandy Peterson for fifth edition. And then right next to it is my Player's Handbook for Castles and Crusades, my Castle Keeper's Guide, my Monsters and Treasure right there.
Yep.
These are my, and that's why they're right here. These are my key reference books that I use when I'm running a game. And so I love Castles and Crusades. I could plug Castles and Crusades all day long. And I, again, this is why at gaming conventions, I tend to run, I would run a basic D&D, the Moldvay box set or the Mincer box set, because of the simplicity.
Yeah.
This, and there is something to be said for that. And I think something positive that fifth edition did is they give you the basic rules for fifth edition for free.
Yes.
And the basic rules for fifth edition are very slimmed down. That's one thing I was really proud of Troll Lord Games, and this needs to be a shout out for Grognards Doing Good. The Grognards at Troll Lord Games during the height of this global pandemic gave away for free the Castles and Crusades Player's Handbook, one of their flagship books.
Yeah.
Those PDFs are out there. They're free.
Yep.
And they did that during the pandemic because so many people were playing role-playing games online.
Yeah.
And there is a simplicity there to be said, and it's very positive. Yeah.
But getting back to the last point I had about fifth edition, and it's that the simplicity makes it easy for me as a DM to teach new people. I have taught more people to play D&D with fifth edition than I have with any other edition, and I think that and that includes my two boys who are 10 and 8. I don't know if I could have taught them, some of the older editions. So that's my last point. Couple of questions here. Rudolph asks, will we be mainly focused on D&D here, or will we discuss other older TTRPs like Middle-earth Role-Playing or Rollmaster? Rudolph used to work at Iron Crown, so he's just generally wondering. I definitely am not intending for this to be a D&D only show. I think we are really at the core of it talking about RPGs as a whole, including our RPG community. So sometimes we might not even talk about a system like we did tonight. We might go and talk about what's going on in the community as well. I think all RPGs are on the table. All are welcome at the table. We say that over and over again. Yeah. All are welcome at the table. So limiting it strictly to D&D, I think, limits us. So yeah, definitely. Now, that being said, Derek and I both, like D&D is like the we have the most like it's like on Steam when you look at your number of hours played, we have most number of hours played on D&D. So that's going to be our default like reference on things. But there are some old school RPGs that I love, and if you find me at say GaryCon, you'll find me running half the time some of those old school RPGs.
Man runs a great Marvel superheroes RPG.
I love me some TSR Marvel superheroes. But so we'll definitely talk about that. So Steve says,
and we'll probably talk about horror role playing because I love Call of Cthulhu.
You do, and you love it a lot more than I do. I think that there's stuff to learn there.
There's Call of Cthulhu out there. There's a wide variety. MERPs. I'm more than happy to talk about MERPs sometime. I never did Rollmaster. I never played MERPs, but the source material they put out for MERPs was great.
Yeah.
So that would be great. So I want to talk about all kinds of stuff, both new and old. So one of the things that you could do as our viewers, if you have topics, you just send that information to us. You can connect to us through our website or wherever you want to connect. And if you send us topics for the show, we're going to look through them, and because we bounce them off of each other. And your topic may come up in one of our shows.
Yeah, absolutely. So Steve says the digital integration of 5e has been amazing for online gaming as well. Yeah, their partnership with D&D Beyond, I know that D&D Beyond sometimes it has some controversy to it because of the fact that you have to buy the digital book again on top of the physical book if you're a physical book kind of a person. There's a bit of a gateway issue there, but I don't know if I have seen a better digital toolkit for an RPG ever.
Yeah. The closest one comes, and again, it's Call of Cthulhu's Dole House.
Yeah.
And the integration isn't there for Roll20, and Dole House is free and fan made.
Yeah.
And we may talk about something like that sometimes, but yeah, D&D Beyond does have that. Willie the Rat has a question here. Well, a statement, more like it. And so I want to read what Willie said. He says, as a forever DM, I jumped at the chance to play some 5e sessions a couple of years ago. Like you say, I miss the simplicity of the retro clones, AD&D and CNC, but I did like the completeness of character creation in 5e. Yeah. You can't you can't downplay that. 5e really does some great work in there. And they've added one of the cool things again about 5e that they did is they took stuff that you used to have to buy another splat book for.
Yeah.
And they added it into 5th edition. So for instance, I remember who was it? Janelle Jacques put out a book called Central Casting back in the day. And Central Casting was an old school book that you went through and you created your backstory, your character's background. Now, it's a lot more detailed than what's in 5th edition, but 5th edition inserted that background into the character creation process.
Yeah.
And you get certain small in-game benefits for that background, which is really cool.
Yep.
And I like that because new players who are not used to creating a background get that little spark. So, for instance, when I'm working with my 12-year-old son on creating a character, he's on the autism spectrum. He doesn't always realize the need for backstory or things like that. And so this kind of sparks a little bit of a conversation in creating the character, which is really, really good.
Yeah.
And it can spur your own creativity there.
Yep.
So I think Woodley the Rat, that is an excellent point about the completeness of character creation in 5e.
Yeah. And there's one last little thing about character creation. I know we're hitting the hour and a half mark. But there's one little extra thing I want to add about character creation. And this is another one of those kind of controversial things. But the custom lineage that came out in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. Some people don't like that, but I will say this. As a DM dad, sometimes your kid says, I want to play this. Right. And they pull something out of a video game or they pull something out of, and you don't, there's not a D&D race for that thing. With custom lineage, you can do it. You can do it. You can all right, sure. You want to be, a platypus person? Sure. You can be a platypus person. Let's pick this, and this. All right. Now, good to go. Here we go. That's a game changer for D&D because you've never had that much customization around a lineage, a heritage, a racial background. It's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Go ahead.
That's why I just agree with you totally on that. Yeah. Because I had to customize a Dragonborn for my son. My son wanted to play a Dragonborn, but he didn't want to be limited to what was just there in the rule books.
Yeah.
And I will say this, for all our people watching, listening at a later date, some people are frustrated by the level of customization that's being put into D&D because D&D never had that before. We really did not have a ton of customization. And I've seen some of the detractors say, well, just go play another RPG. we've got to be honest up front. When we talk about a tabletop role playing game, most people are going to know what Dungeons and Dragons is, and
Sure.
that's what they're going to pick up. And most of the younger players coming in my experience, they are people who are used to customizing stuff more fully because they grew up on video game culture.
Yep.
And I think that it is a necessary evolution in the life of the game to allow for this customization.
Yeah.
With that said, when you are dealing with more mature players and you have your own game world, whether it's a homebrew game world or whatever, you as the DM have the right to say these options are not available.
Mm-hmm.
In my homebrew campaign world, I told them right off the bat, I'm playing with young adults as well as some older adults closer to my age. I told them Dragonborn are not available. And then what do? I introduce Dragonborn because part of my thing, I actually did something you just did, that,
Yep.
and I had no idea you were going to do this in our game, is Dragonborn did not exist in that world. Well, the Dragonborn in my world are in service to Nurgle. Again, we think way too much alike because Tiamat's involved here somewhat,
Yep.
and so the Dragonborn are coming in initially as NPCs in my game before they're opened up as a playable character race. And so it freaks me out when you do stuff like this because I'm like, damn it, Than, because I did this like a month and a half ago, and this stuff just popped up in our games 2 weeks ago, and I never told you about it.
No.
We never talked about it.
No.
So, as always, remember, you're the DM, and you can open up or limit what you want to in your game. And I always recommend to new DMs, always limit it, because if you give too many options as a new DM, you will be overwhelmed.
Absolutely.
Because your players will pull the damn kitchen sink out. They will pull the motor out of the car. They will throw everything at you, and you're not going to know the rules or how to integrate that into your game. So always limit, because then D5e is so modular that then you can begin to expand it. Think of it as a fog of war, if you will.
Yep.
So there you go. There you go.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Sorry.
No, that's good. And I think that's another. You just gave me an idea for another topic. This is good thing.
Awesome.
Because
awesome.
I think we can talk about, our own personal and the chat and the community's own personal recommendations and tips for budding DMs.
Ooh,
I think that's a
great.
whole topic right there.
Oh, yeah.
All right, folks, we're going to wrap it up there for another good Grognards. Thank you so much to everybody who joined us in the chat tonight. Fantastic comments and questions. Throughout the week, please hit us up on social media. We read all the comments, and if you've got ideas, let us know. We're looking for stories for Grognards Doing Good. We are always going to spotlight gamers doing good in the world. That's the most important point. We love stories about fundraising. We love stories about inclusivity. We love stories about creativity, and just people being good to each other. That's what we like to see.
Hey, Than, tell them where they can find us on social media.
Absolutely. So you can find me at Than Gibb. You can find the Good Grognards pretty much anywhere, any social platform. We managed to get the name The Good Grognards. So just wherever you're at, go search for that. You can find, additionally for myself, if you want to check out some of my work about Chronicle, which I talked about tonight, chronicle.cc is the website where you can read some of the comic, and also check out some of my campaign setting, adding more and more there as I go. Derek, where can they find you?
You could pretty much Google The Geek Preacher and you will find me online somewhere. I am The Geek Preacher on TikTok, The Geek Preacher on Instagram. I have a professional page, The Geek Preacher, on Facebook. Only place that I'm just plain old geek preacher is Twitter. And that's where you can find me. And I also have a Patreon out there, but you could hit me up about that privately. Wherever you want to find me, YouTube, you can find, if you're interested in geeky, nerdy sermons, you can find quite a few of those on my Geek Preacher YouTube page as well.
All right. So we'll wrap it up there. Willie, nice to meet you guys. He says, nice to meet you too, Willie. Come back, hang out with us. And Steve, yeah, we'll catch you up when you get back, man. Have fun back home. Until next time, Derek, anything you want to say before for a final sign off?
Keep rolling those dice, and always remember, whether it is the dinner table, the gaming table, or the Lord's table, if I'm there, you're welcome.
Yeah. And just be good to each other out there. Have a good night.
Good night, everybody.